This week, as you practice these yoga postures, I'd like for you to begin wiring in the use of body and breath sensations as anchors into the present moment. Being in the present moment is being aware of what is happening now in a non-judgmental way. As with all mindfulness practices, be compassionate and simply be willing to keep an open awareness and curiosity around thoughts that arise. Your most effective practice will happen when you can maintain a sense of ease in body and mind. Considering the unique circumstances in your body, you may or may not be able to do the structure of the pose as I teach it. I will give you some modifications, but feel free to change the posture as you need. Always listen to your body and avoid any pain sensations. Let's begin with child's pose. This posture is often used at the beginning of a class. It is great for centering, grounding, and invoking an inner awareness. Child's pose supports us in accessing a sense of surrender to the present moment. Take your knees wide to the edges of the mat. Allow your feet to be pointed and flat. Extend your arms forward and then let them relax. Just allow your forehead to rest on the ground or on stacked fist. This is a common way to align the posture. In a moment, I will give you ways to modify as needed. First, let's discuss what we call lines of action. We will teach these for all of the postures that you learn within the course. Lines of action are just what they sound like, places within the body that are awakened, engaged, and extended with any given pose. I like to imagine that you can see bright blue arrows drawn along these lines. In child's pose, there is a possibility of a line of action from the hips to the hands. This is just one way. The posture can also be done mostly passive. The gaze point for this pose is simply an internal focus with eyes closed. Now we'll go over some reasons that you might need to modify the pose and how to approach it if so. If your shoulders are limited in their ability to extend, you can simply bend your elbows to accommodate or rest your arms at your sides. Now notice the extreme extension in the ankle joint. If you are limited here, simply tuck your toes under and/or come up higher with your hips. Take a look at the amount of flexion required in the knee and the hip joint. If either is not accessible, the solution is the same. Simply come up higher with your hips. If the posture just doesn't work altogether for you, for your body, you can simply come to your hands and knees instead of child's pose. Okay, now let's move on to downward facing dog. This pose is an integral part of most yoga classes. It offers full body strengthening along with backside body release and spinal extension. Down dog offers the experience of strength combined with ease, as well as a new perspective from an upside down view. Experienced yogis often see it as a resting pose, while it can definitely present some challenge in the beginning stages of practice. As always, approach with a sense of trying easy rather than trying hard, and keep using your breath as a guide. Begin on your hands and knees. With your hands at shoulder width distance apart, slightly in front of your shoulders. Engage your hands and spread your fingers wide. Have your knees at hip width distance apart with toes tucked under. As you push your hands down and forward, engage your core and legs to lift into an upside down V shape. And just allow your head to hang heavy. Keep a slight bend in your knees and draw your hips up and away from your wrist, elongating your spine. Continue pulling your belly and hips back and away to lessen the weight in your wrist. Your weight should feel well balanced from front to back. Maintain neutrality in your arms and shoulders while keeping your shoulder joints nice and spacious rather than bearing weight in them. Awaken the lines of action from hands to hips, as well as feet to hips. Pick a spot back between your feet to keep your gaze focused. Now we'll go over some reasons that you might need modification options and how to approach the pose if so. If overall strength is an issue, simply try alternating with hands and knees until strength builds. If you feel compressed or tight in your shoulder joints, Try changing the angles of your arms and or hands until you feel relief. If your low back, hamstrings, and calves feel excessively tight, try bending your knees more to offer slack in the back line of the body. If you have wrist conditions such as carpal tunnel, you can do the pose from your forearms, or you might need to avoid the pose altogether. Now we'll go over some reasons that you might need modification options and how to approach the pose if so. If overall strength is an issue, simply try alternating with hands and knees until your strength builds. If you feel compressed or tight in your shoulder joints, try changing the angles of your arms and or hands until you feel relief. If your low back, hamstrings, and calves feel excessively tight, bend your knees more to offer slack in the back line of the body. If you have wrist conditions such as carpal tunnel, you can do the pose from your forearms, or you might need to avoid the pose altogether. Okay, the next pose we will practice is ragdoll. This is another pose that is often at the front end of a class. It is a simple form of inversion that requires steadfast strength in the legs and surrender in the upper body. Its shape is a physical reminder to let go and trust the present moment. Begin in a standing position with feet slightly wider than hip width distance apart. Reach up and stretch your torso out of your hip creases. With bent knees, slowly fold forward while reaching your torso out of your hip creases. Keep your legs strong and maintain a lift up through your low belly and hips while allowing your spine to drape forward. Let your head hang heavy. Enjoy the combination of an active line from heels to hips along with a passive line from hips to crown. Your gaze point is anywhere behind you that is comfortable. Now I will go over some reasons that you might need modification options and how to approach the pose if so. If you have any low back issues, you might opt to keep blocks under your hands while keeping an active long torso. Another option is to keep extra bend in your knees. If you're limited in your ability to flex forward at the hip, try changing the angle of your legs and or feet. If the posture just doesn't seem to work at all for you, you can do a yogi squat instead. Our last pose in this segment will be mountain pose. I like to think of this pose as being representative of standing strong in our truths, ready and willing to do the work of self-discovery. Mechanically, it represents the core of each and every yoga posture. You can think of all postures as variations off of this one. It offers strength, balance, and overall body awareness. Stand evenly with feet anywhere from together to hip width distance apart. Your skeletal structure will determine what feels stable for you. Allow arms to be at sides with palms facing forward. With your legs steady, root down into all four corners of your feet. Keep a slight internal activation of your thighs that connects you up into the pit of your belly for stabilization. Maintain a neutral spine and open chest. Keep an overall equanimity from left to right, front to back, and top to bottom. Stay engaged in the line of action from feet to crown. Keep a forward gaze and slightly lifted. Keep a forward and slightly lifted gaze. If you have trouble with standing, you can do this near a wall or chair for support.